I'm Richa Shakya, Assistant Professor from Noida Institute of Engineering Technology, Pharmacy Institute, Greater Noida. Today, I'm here to deliver a lecture from the subject Human Anatomy and Physiology, which codes BP201T, and today's topic is the spinal cord, their reflex activities. So in the previous lecture we were discuss about what is a structure, what is spinal cord, what is structure of spinal cord, and what is afferent and efferent, what is afferent and efferent nerves. So now here we discuss about the reflex activities. Basically the first question arises in the mind, what is reflex? Reflex means it's an immediate action. It's an immediate action without any voluntary control. It is not in our control, it is just on the brain. Okay. So now we start with the introduction part. So a reflex action, what is reflex action? So it is a reflex action is also known as a reflexes, is an involuntary and it is nearly instantaneous to movement in response to stimuli. Okay, whenever the impulses is arises, at that time the reflexes will automatically generated whenever the body will, whenever you fall down. ठीक है, जब भी आप गिरने वाले होगे या फिर whenever you touch the hot pan or the hot surface, you just remove your hand at that particular surface, or whenever you fall down you just put your hands on the floor to just protect yourself. So these are the reflectory actions. Okay, so now when a person accidentally touch the hot surface, this is an example कि when a person is accidentally touched a hot surface or the hot object, they automatically jerk to their hand away from that surface without any thinking process. वो नहीं सोचेगा कि मुझे हटाना है कि भी रखे रहना है. Just like you are go in the some area, ये just वहाँ पे एकदम से लाइट बहुत तेज से हुई तो आपकी एकदम से आईज ब्लिंक हो जाएगी. ठीक है, दो रिफ्लेक्स, दीज आर द काइंड्स ऑफ रिफ्लेक्स एक्शन जहाँ पे आप लोग को देयर इज अ नो टाइम फॉर थिंकिंग प्रोसेस. वहाँ पे आपको कुछ भी सोचने का टाइम नहीं मिलता है. इट्स अ जस्ट revert, it's a just reflect actions of the body. Okay, now a reflex does not require any thought input. ठीक है, reflexes जब भी arise होंगे तो it is never never time for thought process. You are not able to just think about what can do, what cannot do, we will just remove your hand or not. So it is not up to you. It is the involuntary actions which is only depends on the brain and the spinal cord, and the spinal cord is a bridge between the body and the brain. Now reflex arc that contain only two neurons, a sensory and a motor neuron, are considered monosynaptic. It's an example, just like example, monosynaptic reflexes arc in human include the patellar reflexes and Achilles reflexes. These are the various types of reflexes we will discuss later. Now reflexes, our reflex actions are the involuntary, almost instantaneous movements in response to specific stimulus that taken the path by nerve impulses in the reflex is called reflex arc. So the path taken by the nerve impulses in the reflex. Okay, so this is known as the reflex arc. In human, the most sensory neurons do not pass directly into the brain, but there is a synapse in the spinal cord. So that's why I called it as a bridge. So these characteristics allow reflex actions to occur relatively quickly by activating the spinal motor neurons without delay of routine signals through the brain. Means in the relay center, in the reflex action, there is a just all the decisions are taken by the spinal cord itself, because there is a no time to deliver the impulses to the brain, and brain will interpret, after that it will give the response. So इतना टाइम नहीं होगा तो क्या करेगा, स्पाइनल कॉर्ड जस्ट अपने अकॉर्डिंगली एक्शन बता देगा. ओके, एंड इट इज ऑलवेज पॉजिटिव फीडबैक. ठीक. नाउ ऑल्दो the brain will receive sensory input while the reflex action occurs, there are two types of reflex arc, that is autonomic reflex arc that is affecting inner organs, and next is a somatic reflex arc which are affecting the muscles. So there are the two types of reflex arc. First is autonomic, मीन्स इट इज ऑटोनोमिक, मीन्स एंटायर बॉडी में जो भी हमारे जो इंटरनल ऑर्गन्स हैं उसके अकॉर्डिंगली होता है. उसके बाद साथ ही साथ देयर आर द सोमैटिक रिफ्लेक्स आर्क विच आर अफेक्टेड द मसल्स. नाउ सो रिफ्लेक्स आर्क, अ न्यूरल pathway that control an action. In higher animal, the most sensitive neurons do not pass directly into the brain and it's a synapse. Okay. So there is a ventral and the dorsal roots. They are the ventral and the dorsal roots. So in the vicinity of the cord, the spinal nerves divided into the ventral and the dorsal part. So in the ventral, it is divided into the anterior and the motor part, motor root, and the dorsal is the posterior and the sensory root. ठीक है. So always remember, ventral it's anterior and it's a motor, and the dorsal is posterior and it's always a sensory. ठीक. Now the ventral roots contain mostly efferent because it's a motor. ठीक है, motor is always a efferent. So the ventral roots contain mostly efferent nerve fiber and convey the motor information, and the dorsal roots contain the afferent and which convey the sensory informations. Okay, and the axon of the motor neuron, whose cell bodies are located within the CNS in the anterior. The horn emerges from the spinal cord from the ventral roots, and the group of sensory neurons whose axons make up dorsal roots that lie outside the cord. ठीक है, in the dorsal root of ganglia or the spiral root of ganglia in the peripheral nervous system. Now if you talk about the peripheral distribution of the nerve or the spinal nerve, so peripheral means, I already told you, peripheral means there is side by side. The spinal cord, there is a nerve, okay, there is a nerve, that is spinal nerve, and these are always on the peripheral side. Okay. So a typical spinal nerve has a white ramus that contain the myelinated axon, and the grey ramus which contain the unmyelinated axon. So means white, whenever there is a white matter present in the axon or in the or in the neuron, basically you just plot this कि white always contain, whenever the white matter is present means it's a myelinated, okay, and when it is a grey, it is a non-myelinated. Always remember this, white always myelinated, or gray matter is always a non-matted axons. So these ulnated fibers are introvert glands and smooth muscles in the body wall or the limbs. The dorsal ramus providing the sensory and the motor innervations to the skin and the muscles of the back, and the ventral ramus, what the ventral ramus will do, it supply the ventrolateral body surfaces structure in the body wall and the limbs. So this is the function of the dorsal ramus or the ventral ramus. Though each pair of nerve monitor a region of body surface called as dermaton. ठीक है? So whenever the nerve, each pair of nerve monitor region of body surface is known as dermatome. Now there are some plexus we called as a nerve plexus which is present in the spinal cord. So these nerve plexus, why we call it plexus? Plexus means just like a braid. Braid means just like this. Okay, just like this. These are the braid. Okay, so these nerve plexus, it is a complex interwoven network. Okay, it is a complex interwoven nerve network which is formed during the development of anterior rami of adjacent spinal nerve and blend to form the plexus. Okay, so what is plexus? Plexus is a just like it's a coiled, it's not a coil, it's a interwoven, जो बहुत ही तो गुधा हुआ एक तरीके से देखा जाए तो वो चीज़ आप जो होती है वो नर्व प्लेक्सस बोलते हैं जब वो एक दूसरे में बहुत ज़्यादा उलझी होती हैं. ठीक है. Now there are the 4 nerve plexus: cervical, branchial plexus, lumbar plexus and sacral plexus. So if we talk about their reason, so what is the reason of that particular nerve plexus? So in the cervical plexus, in the cervical plexus it is from neck and the neck to the diaphragm. It is present in the neck and the diaphragm. Branchial plexus, it is in the pectoral girdle and the upper limbs. Lumbar, it's a pelvic girdle and the lower limb, and last one is sacral, that is the pelvic girdle and the lower limb. Okay. Now start with this diagram. So this is the main diagram for the nerve plexus. So there are the various types of nerve plexus, just like if we see here, this is cervical area. Okay, this is cervical area, and this nerve plexus from the C1 to C5. Okay. Now again with their continuation, there is a branchial plexus from the C5 to T1. C5 is cervical, 5 से लेकर के T1, that is thoracic vertebrae number 1. Now this is the lumbar plexus. So lumbar plexus is from the T12 to L4, means from the thoracic vertebrae number 12 to the lumbar vertebrae number 4. यहाँ तक कौन सी होगी आपकी lumbar plexus. Okay, that is known as the also, and from the sacral plexus it is L4 to S4. L4 to S4 means lumbar vertebrae number 4 to the sacral vertebrae number 4. This entire is known as the lumbosacral plexus. Now there is a brain part, there is a lesser occipital nerve. So there is a occipital nerve because there is a occipital region. The back part of the skull is known as the occipital. So there is a occipital nerve. Then there is a greater ocular transverse cervical nerve. This is the clavicular nerve which is present in the scapular region, and this is the pharynx nerve, and this is axillary nerve. Now this muscle is the musculocutaneous nerve. This thoracic area is the thoracic nerve. This radial means if we talk about the bones, so there is a radius, humerus, ulna. So there is a radial nerve, ulnar nerve, and this middle layer is known as a medial nerve, and there is a iliohypogastric nerve, this one. Okay. Now this is a ilioinguinal nerve, genitofemoral nerve, femoral nerve, and obturator nerve. These all are present in the lower limbs. Okay, these are present in the lower limbs or the pelvic girdle. Now if we talk about the cervical plexus which innervate the muscles of the leg and the diaphragm. So the cervical plexus from the anterior rami of spinal from the C1 to C5, that is the cervical 1 to cervical 5, and branches invert with the skin muscles to neck, and it extends through the thoracic cavity. Now pharynx nerve, so it is formed from the C3 to C5 and provide the entire supply to the diaphragm for the breathing. Okay, so this number always remember for the cervical plexus and the pharynx plexus. Now there is a branchial plexus, so it innervates with the pectoral girdle and the upper back and upper limbs. So this branchial plexus is present in the pectoral girdle. This is a pectoral girdle. Okay, scapula, it's a back part scapula, and the upper limbs. Upper limbs means your entire head, entire hand. This is a humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. Okay, so these are the upper limbs. Now anterior rami of C5 and T1, it is up to C5 to T1, and it forms a trunk, and this trunk is split into division, and this division combine to form the cords. Okay, so this anterior rami from C5 to T1 trunk split into division, and this division combined again and they form the cords. So most of the nerve of branchial plexus come of cord and few from origin the trunk. Now this is the structure of the branchial plexus. So this is about dorsal scapular, because this is from the scapular region. So this is dorsal capsular, this is nerve to subclavicus, nerve to subcapsular, this is posterior division, this is cord. This is the cord which I called the, this is division and division they combine to form the cord. So these are the cords, that is the lateral, posterior and medial. Okay, this one and again this one. These two are combined together and they to form the cords. Okay. Now this is the axillary. This is axillary. Now this is a musculocutaneous, radial nerve, medial and ulnar nerve. So there is a long thoracic, medial pectoral, lateral pectoral. There is a lower subscapular, and this is the thoracic, thoracodorsal, and this is the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm. So this is a diagram of the branchial plexus. Now lumbar and the sacral plexus. So in the lumbar plexus or the sacral plexus, so the lumbar and the sacral segments, it is the lumbar, sacral. So now, so the term, the name shows that there is a two segments. Okay, so there is a intervertebral trunk, pelvic girdle or lower girdle. So lumbar plexus is formed with the help of T12 and L4. So, sacral trunk is a branches contributed to the sacral plexus, and these sacral plexus formed to the spinal nerve number L4 to S4, that is a lumbar 4 to sacral 4. Now, sciatica nerve, it also contains the sciatica nerve, that is the largest and longest nerve of the body. So, this is the largest and longest nerve of the body, that is the sciatica nerve. Now, classification of reflexes, if we talk about the classification of reflexes, so there are so their development, innate and acquired, site of information processing, cranial or spinal reflexes. Nature की बात करें अगर, so nature of resulting the motor responses, it's maybe somatic or visual. It is the somatic and visual, and the complexity of the neural circuit is monosynaptic and the polysynaptic. Now, there are types of the reflexes. So, there is a first type of reflexes is stretch or a myotic reflex. It is a monosynaptic reflex and it maintains erect portion, that is a knee jerk or patellar jerk, or ipsilateral responses, that stimulus on the same side. Now, gamma motor. So, these gamma motor neurons reflexes that acts on the smooth out of the nerve movement of the muscles for the contractions and the sustain of the contraction of the muscles. For the, these are the gamma motor neurons. Then plantar reflexes. So, these are clinically test the integrity of the spinal cord from L2 to S2, and it is tested by drawing the blunt instrument down the lateral aspect of the sole plantar of the foot. So, the normal response is curling down or flexion of the foot. Now, withdrawal reflex are so involved in the sensory receptors, afferent neuron, interneuron, alpha motor neurons or skeletal muscles. So, for the reflex withdrawal actions, there are the various types of neurons which are involved for that particular reflexes. Now, reflexes are the vital for the homeostasis, for maintaining the homeostasis. So, reflexes is the rapid autonomic responses to specific stimuli, and it preserves the homeostasis through the rapid adjustment in the organ or the organ system. It is a variability in the response. Now, there are the 5 components of reflexes arc, that is sensory receptors which stimulate the receptor, sensory neurons which activate the sensory neurons, integration center, information processing in the CNS, motor neuron, activation of the motor neurons, and last one is the affector sites, that is response to the particular peripheral effect. Now, stretch reflexes, there is the involvement of the spindle fibers, send information to the spinal cord, where the synapse is not where the synapse is on the motor neuron or the synapse muscles, causing the contract, at the same time stimuli the neuron and prevent the contraction from the antagonist muscles. Now, there is a stretch reflexes. So, there is if there is some pain, so there is a extension of the stretch muscles, then stimulation of muscle fibers. After that, there is a primary afferent neuron excited, जो means जो neurons होंगे, these are excited or they produce the stimulation, and after the stimulation they primary efferent to the neuron stimulate the alpha motor neuron to the extensor and the muscles, and they goes to the brain, and brain will this is again the alpha motor neuron stimulate the extension muscles to contract and the primary efferent neuron stimulate the inhibitory interneurons, and after that the interneuron inhibits alpha motor neurons, and that is a flexor means कुछ चीज़ लगी है, आपने पैर हटाया और वापस से एक नॉर्मल टाइम के बाद आपने उसको प्रॉपर रख लिया, ठीक है. तो दिस इज अबाउट द रिफ्लेक्स. नाउ फ्लेक्सर एक्शंस. सो टाइप्स ऑफ द विड्रॉल रिफ्लेक्सेस. सो अफेक्ट the muscles of limb. Example, pain stimulus of grappling a hot pan, pain receptor stimulated, sensory neuron activated, interneuron in the spinal cord, interneuron are stimulated motor neurons in anterior gray horn, resulting the contraction of flexors with withdrawn hand from the stimulus. That is a reciprocal inhibition, means keep extensor relaxed, means block the oppositions. So this is a diagram for the flexor reflections, means whenever you feel the painful stimulus, the hot pan is too much hot, the plate is too much hot, so you just feel that pain. So this painful stimulus, it arises and it goes to the posterior root of ganglia and it distributed with the gray horn to the other segments of the spinal cord, right? And after that it interpret, and there is the reflex action, that is the flexor stimulator, means just flex, just leave it, okay. So at that time you just leave that particularly object, the particular hot object which is too much hot. Now there is a cross extensor reflexes. There is a cross extensor reflexes. So these cross extensor reflexes involved in the contralateral reflexes are an addition to motor responses occur on the opposite side of the stimulus, means whenever you just put a leg on the pin, there is a sensory neuron, there is a interpretation in the spinal cord, and there is extensor reflexes. After that there is a motor neuron and you just remove your leg that particular pin. So these are the kinds of reflexes which is in the spinal cord. So thank you. So this is all about the nervous system, brain, spinal cord. So how they coordinate with each other in entire body to perform the body system. Thank you.